All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Deep End. We're just going to get right into it. We were talking beforehand. We're going to kick it off with some financial stuff, some investing stuff, I suppose. For the first time in a while, I know we usually ramble on other things before getting into the investing stuff, but yeah, Ari and I were just having kind of a conversation. I don't know how in depth you want to get with it, Ari. That's up to you. But we were having I'll try and set the stage. We're having just a conversation about some life stuff going on, and I don't know. Should I just kick it over to you? Like, it's your story to tell, so I don't know.
Yeah,
We
might as well. So we'll just go deep right away, man. I like to keep my life kind of as an open book, so here we go.
Okay. Okay.
I was just sharing with Ryan. We're catching up, and I was just sharing with him. There's a business trip I have coming up, but then also some family issues that arose. Whereas my mom was just diagnosed with diabetes, and so Ryan had then recognized, or he shared the point that, as bad as things may get, or, seemingly as they can be, or whatever it is, because of how I've set myself up financially, it's like walking through calm. And that's my reality. Is the point I was about to make is, one of the things that I'm thinking about doing right now is actually buying my mom a townhome, a townhouse or a home, and moving her in there. And, I take care of the finances anyway. So I'm kind of just balancing all that and thinking out loud, even in this moment. But to be even able to say that is such a blessing, to be able to say it, because there's so many people out there who are just in the financial rut, that they are stressed during all of these moments. And there have been a lot of moments this past year and years prior where, I have not been stressed in the slightest. I'll even bring up, my ex-girlfriend, she had some things going on. I'm not going to share her stories, but, what I always told her was like, quote unquote, babe, like whatever happens is going to happen. You never need to worry because I'm set. Like everything's set. And so I think, what a blessing not to have to worry about finances in the slightest. Actually, my last call with my mom was literally, Mom, don't worry about anything finance related. Money comes, money goes, but the system's set, so I don't have to worry. Yeah, that's just such an epic phone call to have when someone's super stressed about money and you're just like, don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
And that's my reality, which it's so much calm.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like you said, it's such a huge blessing. And I think, honestly, that's just another reason, another example of why it's so important to, invest and set aside money for the future. Because, yes, we always think about investing for the future and from the lens of, reaching financial freedom and for the sake of retirement. Obviously, that's primarily what it's there for. But my goodness, when these black swan events, when these unexpected life events do pop up, which they're always going to do, that's just part of life. And so when these things do pop up, thank goodness that you've been building wealth, you've been building some sort of nest egg that if push came to shove, you can always tap into. We never want to tap into our investments, right? Because rule number one is of compounding is don't unnecessarily interrupt it. But man, like I said, if push came to shove, thank goodness you were trying to do the responsible thing for your future, because when these things pop up, that money's there and you can always tap into it if need be. So yeah, huge blessing, man. Huge blessing. And once again, I'm sorry to hear that you guys are going through that.
Yeah, the way I look at it is like life is life. Like there's always going to be things coming your way, and it's all about how you're going to be able to manage it. So while it's not the greatest news in the world, and it threw a curveball my way, nonetheless, it's like you could still play to that curveball, which is really cool. But even my portfolio has been sitting around $430,000.
Nice.
Just like pretty even keel actually throughout all of this, and it should be, by the way, like I think upwards of 440, 445, but the market as it's been, it's not a shot. But so let's just take 430, man. Just 10% of that, 43,000. That's some salaries that are out there of people watching this very video. So it is really cool when you set yourself up to not have to worry later. is the greatest gift. And I feel like so many of us do a disservice to ourselves by being too impatient, not allowing that compounding machine to really take full effect. And it brings up this quote for me. There's three types of people, Ryan. Maybe you've heard this one before. I feel like every quote always starts, there's like two types of people. There's three types of people, right?
Well, three's just a nice even number, you know. So it's
so there's three types of people out there. There's the people who make things happen. There's the people who watch things happen. And then there's the people who say, what the heck just happened? You know, and I love that. And I shared it just a couple hours ago with another friend of mine, and we were laughing about that, because depending on where you're going to place yourself is going to really determine a lot of your life. You better not be in that last box of like, what the heck just happened? That's the worst one you can be in. The person who's in that watching things happen, right? There's power, at least a little bit of power to that, because at least you're aware of things that are going on. You're just not taking the actions, but you're in tune. But of course, the best place you can be is making things happen. And so I bring that up because, you know, in order to get to where I got today, or to where Ryan is today, it's like we had to make things happen. We had to cut costs, you know, put money aside, invest it accordingly. And patience, I think we're going to bring up the book in a hot second, right? But and the book kind of talks about it. I'm going to bring it up, man. I bought this book the other day, and I finished it by today. Same as ever. Morgan Housel. Great book. I'd actually rate it an 8.5 out of 10.
Real quick, where would you put it? Where would you put it in comparison to Psychology of Money? Because this is the follow-up.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like the movies, man. When a movie comes out, first one's always great. The remaining, the next like movie, and the third and the fourth, a little bit worse and a little bit worse. I don't want to say it's worse. Totally different concept, if you will. But I was more impressed with Psychology of Money.
Okay.
Would you say the same?
Yeah, I think the main reason being Psychology of Money, it's just, man, it hits you like a ton of bricks, because a lot of that information, it just, so many things click, and it's like you're reading it for the first time. I think a lot of these psychological themes, that was probably, that we talk about, that I've now learned from other places. I think reading that book was like the first time I really got some good exposure to it, and just like clear exposure. The way that it was put into words made it click so much more. But to your point, same as ever, there's some similarities between the two, but it is a totally different book, and the concept and the themes in it are different. And as an investor, I feel like Psychology of Money was maybe less about investing, more so just general money behavior. I feel like this one speaks a bit more to investors specifically. So from that perspective, I'll kick it back over to you. It really resonated with me more, I would say, on the investing side.
What would you put it on the scale, 1 to 10, 10 being the best?
I think 8.5 is pretty fair. It's been a while since I read it, but how I kind of gauge that scoring is if I'm reading a book and I'm taking notes on it, you know, if when all is said and done, if I've got just tons of different notes and quotes pulled from the book, to me that is deserving of a higher score. Yeah, exactly. So if you're going through that and you're just finding all these different nuggets, then clearly there's something there, because that's what you read for. You read to pull out those lessons and takeaways. So I think the more of those that there are, the greater the impact the book is going to have on you. And that's the whole point of reading, is to come out changed and hopefully more wise. And so from that point of view, it's like very high scoring book.
Yeah, 100%, man. I know, like, the more notes that I have in it, the better the book was. And then there's always some books that are like, you know, you might get to like the second to last chapter and there's the nugget. So you had to go through the whole book to get to the nugget. I think some people pick up a book, they get really bored. First couple of chapters, they put it down. Actually, this book talks about people doing exactly that. It's like Morgan Housel talks about, you know, authors write these books with all these chapters, but most people only read the first or second chapter anyways. So, Ryan, there's a quote I had actually plucked out of this book specifically for this conversation. I thought about you when I was reading it, And so I
Okay.
want to get your take on it. It actually kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about now.
While you're
Patience
reading
of
it, I'm going to pull up
investing.
my book. While you're reading it, I'm going to pull up my book notes and see if I pulled
Are
this
you
quote as well.
are you an ebook guy?
No, I read the physical books, but I have like a Notion template where I log all of my book notes and then I publish them on my website. So I'm gonna pull it up and see if
See
I
which
pulled
one.
this quote too. Yeah. Anyway,
All right, so here we
sorry.
go. Here we go. Do you want me to tell you the page, or you just want to see if I got the quote that you have?
Yeah, the page would actually help.
Page 85. I guess if there's any other readers of there are actually someone messaged me. I posted this on Instagram, and someone messaged me. She said I just picked up this book now as well. So there are some readers of Same as Ever out there. But page 85. Here we are. It says most young tree saplings. Bet you didn't think I was going there, did you?
No, and I
Most
already
young
don't have the
tree
quote.
saplings spend their early decades under the shade of their mother's canopy. Limited sunlight means they grow slowly. Slow growth leads to dense hard wood. But something interesting happens if you plant a tree in an open field. Free from the shade of bigger trees, the saplings gorges on sunlight and grows fast. Fast growth leads to soft, airy wood that never had time to densify. What's your take on that?
I love it, man. It is a great example of speed versus resilience. And there, I'm kind of getting the chills after hearing that quote because you're right. Something like this is very much up my alley. But that seems to be the trade-off if we apply it directly to investing. Maybe we should circle back and apply it to the three types of people that you brought up earlier because I think that's really what kicked this off. But specifically as it pertains to investing, like the difference is buying, a company to see like, rapid growth, higher volatility, potentially faster gains, but also potentially faster losses. The faster the gains, maybe the less resilient and dependable those gains are going to be. Whereas on the other side of that, if you buy something that maybe is a bit more slower growing, maybe a bit more defensive or defensible, and less resilient to change, there's more of that same as ever factor to it. Even though there's not as much volatility, maybe those gains, I don't want to say will be set in stone, but maybe they will be less likely to, take steps backwards over time. That's kind of the trade-off that I'm getting from that quote. Am I on there? Am I explaining that right? Or do you have any different thoughts? Do you take it differently? What do you think?
I would only add,
Okay.
yeah, because I second what you just shared. I just, I add to that in sharing that in relation to, the three types of people. I feel like a lot of people pass up making something happen and they stay in the second type, so watching things happen, and the worst type, like what just happened, like they're clueless. And there's city populations of clueless people.
Yeah.
Like my buddy who I shared this quote with earlier just moved to Miami, and he was like, "Man, I am literally like just taken back by the amount of fake wealth that's walking around here, and like everybody's like driving sports cars, but you can easily tell they're not wealthy, And that was interesting because he's typically not someone to even talk like that. So to hear him say it, I was like, wow. My brother lived in Miami for quite some time, and I would always visit. And I love Miami. I actually really like Miami, but I can definitely understand. I lived in Miami and LA for a bit of time as well. And I feel like so many people try to fake it, especially nowadays, instead of really making it happen. And why that relates is because I feel like everybody wants to be the tree out there in the field, but as we just read there, that tree is going to grow weaker over time versus the tree that's a little bit covered, slower growth, but grows dense hardwood and is going to stay around for decades. And I think that's the magic, because building your portfolio, structuring your portfolio and your investments, I did not get to where I am today overnight. I didn't even get here in 6 months or a year, but there are some investors out there who do. They hit the jackpot right off the bat. But then what quickly happens is they think they're like Nostradamus. They think they're the next Warren Buffett. And they actually tend to lose it much quicker. And we hear a lot of those stories. So yeah, I take that quote and I'm like, to really make things happen is the Rome wasn't built in a day mindset, I think.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
really make things happen and be like, just unstoppable and unmovable.
Spot on, man. I think as it pertains to making things happen and bringing that into the wealth building process or reaching financial freedom, you know, I like to say it's not going to build itself. Your portfolio is not going to build itself. So just naturally to build wealth, you have to inherently be the type of person that's going to make it happen. But attached to that is this difference, and this is talked about, I think, in Same as Ever and other places as well. But there's this kind of dichotomy of prediction versus preparedness. And to your point about having success in the market, if you hit it big on a hot stock, it's easy to then become overconfident. That's the bias that comes with it, this overconfidence bias, this Nostradamus factor that you have to fight against. But if you fail to do so, then you think because you've had success in the past, you can now predict what's going to happen next. And in doing so, it makes it more difficult for you to understand that there will be black swan events or things that you're not able to predict, or you kind of forget the fact that really you can't predict anything, and there's so much luck involved in this. And so in thinking that way, you fail to prepare for these unexpected events. And if you fail to prepare for these unexpected events and fail to establish some resilience and don't even keep that in mind, then you become like the tree that's standing in the open field. Yes, you've been exposed to the sunlight, but the first gust of wind that comes along is more likely to take you out and have you taking steps backwards, which will pretty quickly, hopefully, remove that Nostradamus effect and can humble you very quickly. And only then will you hopefully start to learn just how important it is to have that resilience, to be able to establish those deep roots and realize that there is more to think about than just the speed at which your portfolio grows, because that can disappear sometimes just as fast as it came. And the thing about this game of investing, this infinite game that we're playing, we always talk about these infinite games. I feel like it's such, especially for us young guys, well, even for older people too, actually, who don't feel like they have as much time. But no matter how old you are, you get to play this game for the rest of your life. So it's really not just about what your portfolio does today or getting it to point B tomorrow or as fast as you possibly can. Because even if you did reach that goal, you still have to worry about the rest of your life. So I think in all cases, you have to structure your portfolio and make decisions in your portfolio with the realization that I still have to make sure that this portfolio can, be sustained and withstand whatever the market throws at it for the next 10, 20, 30, 40, in our cases, Ari, hopefully like 70 plus years. So that resilience, building those deep roots and becoming unshakable is ever important.
100%, man. I'm happy you brought that all up, because there's another page here in the book. I don't know how well everybody can see this, but it's this chart, and this chart is really just showing the timeline of positive returns. So it's not, Morgan Housel here is making the point that it's not that you can't make a positive return in one day, but it's just that your odds are not necessarily, with you, and they're stacked against you. But over time, so, let's take one day, there's a 52% chance that you can make the positive return in one day. But if you go to 30 years, the chart now shows a 100% chance. And so in making it happen, I think the cool part about that, there's rarely ever a 100% chance of anything. But I think if you're, from what we've seen thus far in history and market, if you're invested for the long term, for the 20-year, 30-year periods, 40-year periods, you will get, I'm not going to say how much, but there's a positive return that you'll gain. And I just think that's cool. And that is making it happen. I think the other issue, a lot of the times with people when they have that mindset of all start when, or, I can't start now because, well, you're in that second type of person, right? You're just watching things happen. You're sitting on the sideline versus the person who's just starting literally with $1, and over time they're going to realize those returns. And the greatest realization is that it never mattered how much you were throwing into the market as long as you were throwing something in. And that's all it takes to make something happen.
There's this quote. I don't remember who said it. I heard it in a podcast yesterday. It goes something like, and I'll paraphrase it. It's like, it doesn't matter how fast you're going, as long as you don't stop. It doesn't matter how fast the progress you're making. It doesn't matter. What matters is not stopping. And I think that totally applies here, because it really is just a game of continuing to take one step forward and putting one foot in front of the other. I will say, though, something I thought about as you were talking, going back to the person that makes it happen, is yes, you do have to be that person who, you've got to put the money in. You have to invest. But I think also sometimes, going back to the person who hits it big on a hot stock, or sees some crazy gain on an investment, I think that you can maybe think that you are too much that type of person. You can give yourself too much credit, I should say. And this kind of goes into the overconfidence thing. I made this happen. I made this 100% gain happen. That was my intellect and my decision making, and that's why I got those returns. And sure, like to an extent, yes, you had to be the one to make that decision and pull the trigger on it, and sit through the ups and downs to get to that point. But also, I think that lends itself to too much overconfidence, and you start to think, this is all because of me. When in investing, I think, once again, we forget how much luck there is involved, like luck that the world events turned out the way they were. And, with the unlimited different ways that things can play out on any given day, the odds of them happening this one specific way were so small, just by chance things happen to be that way. And it's such I don't know, it's such an interesting thing to think about as an investor, because you want to have some confidence in your decision making, but attached to that is always, I guess, the idea that it could go a completely different way than what you're thinking or what you are expecting. And I think Monish Pabrai kind of had a quote about this. It was either him or Vitaly Katznelson, one of those two. Which, by the way, if you like Monish Pabrai, Ari, I think you'd really like Vitaly Katznelson. He wrote this book called Soul in the Game, and he's also got a weekly email newsletter. But I think they say a lot of the same things. He's like another kind of Buffett, Munger, value investing disciple kind of guy. But he said something like, to be an investor, especially if you're going to be investing in individual companies, you have to have this sort of like, I don't remember the exact phrase that he used, but you kind of have to be a little bit arrogant, and a bit self-righteous. Like, you have to think that this is where it gets interesting, going back to the person who's making it happen without becoming overconfident. You have to have a bit of overconfidence and a little bit of hubris to think that you can make the right decisions in the face of an uncertain world, but you can't be so certain that you are blind to other possibilities. There was a phrase he used. It was like humble hubris or humble arrogance or rational arrogance or something like that. But do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you understand that kind of that tightrope that you have to walk?
Yeah, there's the balance. There's a fine balance. And I have two things. First of all, I actually reached out. I have to check out this other investor you just mentioned. I did reach out to Monish's team, to Monish himself. I wanted to have him on Masters of the Market. I did get a response back.
Nice.
I did get a response back. He's got too many podcast invites, so here's what I'm going to propose. And I'm going to see. It's pretty crazy, man, but I'm going to throw this proposal out there for him. I want to take him to lunch.
There you go.
So I want to see if I can meet with him in any way.
Yeah. That's how he got not his big break, but that's kind of what put him on the map too. So maybe he'll be receptive to that. So for those of you guys who don't know, Monish Pabrai, back in I think 2006, Monish Pabrai and one of his best friends, Guy Spear, who you'd also really like. He's got a book,
I know
the
Guy Spear. Yeah.
yeah, The Education of a Value Investor, I think is his book. But they bid like $650,000 to have lunch with Warren Buffett. And sure enough, they did. They won the auction. It was all for charity, and so they met up with him at whatever the steakhouse is in Omaha, or maybe it was in New York. I don't remember where it is, but they met up with him for lunch. Monish took his whole family, his daughters, and everything. And I don't know if Guy came solo or with his wife, but yeah, I guess they spent like 3 hours together, and it was pretty life changing for both of them. So who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
he'll be
And then
receptive to
that
that.
led to Monish meeting Charlie Munger, right? So
Yes.
there's a whole storyline there. But the reason why I'm going to bring that up is because exactly that. Monish got his big break, meeting Warren Buffett by going to lunch. So I'm gonna see what I can do, man. I mean, the way I think about all these things, it's like, what's the worst that happens? He says no, like, oh, all right, like, I'll just say, I'll see it in a couple of years, like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. For me, this is all just a game, because at the end of the day, the reason, which by the way, this is totally taking me down a different track, but I have to share this thought. When Monish sent me that email back, first of all, I was just so grateful that I even got an email back. Like, let's just start there for half a second, right? I was like, wow, like I actually got an email back. That's epic. And then I was trying to think about the reply, and then I was like, well, I don't want to reply yet until I get all my business trip plans down, because I'm going to try to fit it all in to meet him. I'm going to fly wherever he is. I'll fly there, fly to his hometown or city or whatever, and we'll get lunch, whatever. That's how I see it in my world. And if he says no to that, another time, all good. He doesn't know I'm so persistent, But man, okay. So because of that, and I also stopped writing the reply email, and I drafted it, and I just sat and I said, like, Monish got his big break, and this was such an interesting thought. I literally shut the whole computer down and everything. Let me just take a couple hours to really sit on this. So bear with me. Monish got his big break because he already became something big. He wasn't just meeting with Buffett for the sake of meeting with Buffett because he won like an auction and donated $100 or $10,000. Dude, he like over $500,000, was the auction. So when I thought about that, what I really started thinking about was, man, like, this is almost such an epic test, because it's really showing you that in order to really get lunch with a lot of these guys, you got to play at their level, and their level is going to be 100x where you're at right now. So how are you going to make that happen? And it just got me thinking, like, Monish, and let's just go back to that tree, analogy here, right? Like being like the tree in the forest, because I think we spoke about this a little bit last time, and that's probably why it was all coming to my mind. So many people today are pretending to be, if you go on Instagram and just scroll on reels, like the random reels, you see the same reel 10 million times over by 10 million different creators. And, why do I want to be an influencer? To influence you, and how to eat better, how to work out better, how to this better. It's like, man, that was the last guy and the last gals. And it's just like, it's not original. And so I'm kind of thinking about this now, and I'm like, first of all, I feel like today it's so easy, more than ever, to be an authentic copy, because so many people are just copycatting. But the other piece to that, the thing I was really thinking about, is you need to become the person that Monish was when he got the lunch with Buffett. He was already a massive, massive success. And so that really kind of put a pep in my step, man. If, it's just like exciting. Like, I don't take any of this as like, oh, poor me, I can't meet him, or like, screw him, I can't meet him. It's like, no, like, look at the big picture. Monish was already, tens of millions, right? I don't know how big his fund was when he met with Buffett, but he did the thing already, So I thought about that, and the immediate thought was like, Ari, you need to become the thing before, that lunch. That might be the way, right, that you need to take. Does that make sense? And so
Yeah,
going
but
back
then
to these trees, man, it's like, it's going to take a moment. It's going to take some
yeah.
time.
Well, I think that to your point, there's two different ways that you can react to that thought. Is number one, it's like I'm nothing, I'm dirt, I'm scum, I'm just like, get down about yourself. Or on the other side of that, you can look at that and say, I've got work to do. I've got to keep leveling up. I've got to keep playing the game. And I already know you leaned into the latter, and that's like that should be exciting. It's always
Yeah.
exciting to know that there's work to do. But now, not that there wasn't before, but now it's like, okay, here's another like motivation. Here's another reason to keep pressing on and keep moving forward and keep putting one foot in front of the other,
Well,
so you
I'll
can
tell
be
you,
on the
man.
same playing field.
I want to get lunch with Monish, and this is also pretty deep. Like, first of all, I just think like, you know, Buffett is now officially retired. Munger's passed. Many of the greatest investors of all time, I think of all time, are
Hmm.
since ceased. And I want to capture. And this is even going to be a part of my email back to Monish is I'm just going to say like no cameras, no recordings, nothing. Just a lunch so I can learn from you, right? Like just your mind. Like I just think guys like Monish and like these brilliant thinkers, not enough people, especially today, are really becoming the sponge to soak in everything that they have. And I find that, and it's really come from like masters of the market, man. I love learning about other people's successes and failures because that is where true wisdom comes from. So, for me, like you already shared, it's like, yeah, it's going to be a matter of time in my world. Like I'll just get there. Might not be now, but I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to get to where I want to go and need to go to get that lunch. And again, I go back to I'm just grateful. Like I wonder how many emails he gets a day, but he answered. Like that is pretty epic in my world. That like somehow this divine inbox miracle, right? It's like I got the answer, and like that's just pretty cool to me. So I'm really like hyped up about that. And it gave me some power thoughts to really sit on and think on. And then I also wanted to tell you, man, I know I said there are three types of people in this world, but then there's really two types of people in this world, right?
Okay.
And I'm gonna
Yeah.
say this: the two types of people come down to the people who don't know and the people who don't know that they don't know. And
Yeah.
so I like to live this life really like I don't know, man. Anything's possible, and like everything's happening for me, not to me. It's all happening for me. And I think that's another, as an investor, it's just been such a great mindset to have because as the market's going up and down, one of the things I always say is like, what if I lose it all? Like, what if something just happens, I just lose it all? Um, and my mind goes to, well, I don't know, that could happen. Something could happen, that just could happen. But then you're just gonna
Yeah.
go back to work, and life goes on. Like at the end of the day, man, we're all gonna die. So I'm not gonna be married to the money. I'm gonna be married to the process. And therefore I can fall in love with not knowing, and I don't need to be the imbecile, who walks around the earth thinking that I know things when really I don't, man. And that's also why I want to meet with Monish and these other great investors, because I want to just sit in front of them and be like, I know nothing, like just talk to me, like I just like a sponge, take it all in. And that's where I think the best gifts come from.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, I feel like, but I think in all this conversation about Monish, it kind of reminds me of the other three kinds of people. So we started out, there's three kinds of people, but really there's two kinds of people. But then there's three other types of people. And we kind of started talking about this the other day when we were on the phone. It's so funny because we talk so much throughout the week, and then there's some instances, guys, where we have to stop ourselves because no, we can't talk about this yet. This is like deep end.
Save
Now
it.
yeah, we got to save it. So in bringing it back up now, all this conversation about Monish kind of reminds me to recall the other three kinds of people you were telling me about yesterday, with the three eyes. Do you want to lay that out?
Oh yeah, I mean there are three other types of people. You
That's
know?
where I thought you were
So
going to go with it at first, but
yeah,
I was
there's a
introduced to
lot of
three
types
new
of
kinds
people.
of
That's
people.
what
Oh
Ryan and I
yeah,
are really getting at is there's a lot more than just two and three types of people. There's a lot
yeah.
of types out
So
there.
far we're up to eight.
So so okay, with these three types of people, I was in the dog park and I always try, man. You know, my routine is lately wake up in early a.m., do my run, and then afterwards come home, sip my Gatorade. While I'm sipping on the Gatorade, replenishing, I'm trying to find a podcast. The thing is, I do this every morning, so obviously it's like I'm a lot of these podcasts like boom, 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 boom. So I was like, you know what? This is the other day. I was, you know what? Let me just find a clip, you know, maybe of Buffett. You know, just I always want to be taking knowledge in, or just someone with wisdom sharing things with me. So I haven't heard Buffett in a while. I got Buffett, you know, on in the dog park, and Buffett is talking about the 2008 financial just catastrophe, and he's really now, and he brings up three types of people. So I didn't bring this one up, right? Buffett is talking about '08. He's also talking about just the history of investing as well, and he starts talking about there's three types of people that, and they all start with I. And so you have the innovator, and we'll break down each of these. And then you have the imitator. And last but not least, my favorite is you have the idiot. Buffett's words, not mine. But I like that Buffett threw that. It almost sounds like a Munger quote, doesn't it?
Kind of
Buffett's
does,
pretty
yeah.
intense there.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
but
very direct.
we have the innovator, we have the imitator, and we have the idiot. And so when we start to talk about these types of people when it comes to investing, you know, the innovator is finding the innovative strategies or the methodology to curate the portfolio, to have this investment that's a golden opportunity. And then you have, you know, the imitator who comes along, does not know two things about two things, looks at a guy like Warren Buffett and goes, I'll do it. And he might get a win out of that because he tracks Buffett pretty well, but he still doesn't know what he's doing. And then you have the last guy, the idiot, who shows up, who just throws all of his money in, has zero clue, didn't watch anything. This is probably like the person who's watching Jim Cramer, who's like after the fact of everything, throwing everything in. And it kind of correlates to the first three types of people we were talking about. The guy who's saying, what
Yeah.
the heck just happened? That's the idiot. You know, that's the zero. And this guy is like the total clown. So Ryan, I want to kick it back to you and just like, what do you take with all of that, the three eyes?
So I was trying to remember because we started talking about it a couple days ago. I was trying to remember. I feel like I had a pretty good take then that I want to pull back up. Oh yeah. So it seems to me. Let's just start with Monish because I kind of used him as the segue. So Monish Pabrai refers to himself as a shameless cloner. He directly ripped off everything from Warren Buffett to a T. Like even just the fund structure or partnership structure that he runs. Yeah, same exact thing. So he refers to himself as a shameless cloner, which I think would naturally put him in the imitator category, rightfully so. But he would say that's actually a good thing. But I will say, and so with that said, it's not always bad to be an imitator, but it really depends what you're imitating. And what you're imitating is what separates, you know, you as the imitator from being an idiot. I think the difference is really the imitator will imitate the process from the innovator. They will take the blueprints, what they're doing, what worked for them. They will reverse engineer it. They will dissect it. They will then, you know, build their own version of that, or basically take that exact process and, you know, do whatever they're going to do with it. They're basically copying the process. Whereas the idiot is copying the actual decisions. They don't care what the process is. They don't even know what the process is. If Warren Buffett's buying a stock, if Jim Cramer's saying to buy a stock, whoever it is, they're just going to buy that stock because this other person said so. And they have no idea, to your point, about the earlier three people. They have no idea what the heck is going on. The stock's going up. They don't know why. The stock's going down. They don't know why. They don't know whether they should buy. They don't know whether they should sell because they don't have the process. They don't really understand the reasoning behind the decision making. And so I think that's a really key difference. And we see all types of people in the market, people who make decisions for all different sorts of reasons. But, I think the key takeaway from all of it is don't be the idiot. If you're going to copy someone, don't do something just because someone else is doing it. And I know this is well covered territory with us here on the podcast, but it is certainly worth bringing up again because it is always so prevalent. Don't do things just because someone else is doing them or buy things because someone else is buying them. If you can understand why they're doing it and you understand the process behind that decision and you agree with that, I think it's a different thing. But just to blindly follow people's moves in their portfolio, or even just in life, if you're blindly following something or just blindly going with whatever someone wants you to do, it's no way to live life. It's no way to make decisions. And furthermore, really, it's no way to have resilience. It's no way to establish those deep roots if you can't have the knowledge to make your own decisions. I don't see how you can play this game for a long time. You'll have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I really like that, man. As you were talking, I was just thinking about, so the idiot is just always the idiot. I feel like we don't even need to talk about the idiot much, right? There's just no idea what's going on. And, I would assume that the idiot's probably not even watching this podcast, at least at 41 minutes in, because they don't care about anything. They're there to make the quick buck and hope they hope and wish, and they have no idea what's going on. So that leaves us then with the innovator and the imitator. And I think what's really interesting is when you kind of extrapolate out and look at these two in different aspects of life. So like, for example, in the social media game, it's really important to continuously be the innovator. Like you need to be authentic. And I think that's, truth be told, for me, I really lost interest on Instagram very quickly as all of a sudden everybody became a creator and a podcaster, and like, it's all the same content. It literally is all the same content. I just can't watch it anymore. It's annoying, to be honest. So when I find someone who's authentically themselves and an innovator there, I mean, that's where it becomes gold. Now, on the flip side of the script, I think there's wisdom when it comes to investing and actually being a bit of an imitator. And I'll cop, kind of Monish's take on this. Being a shameless cloner is brilliant because in this category or in this aspect of life, you have the Joe Schmo who made all the mistakes already. So as long as you don't make those same mistakes, but then you can see someone's investment, like for example, when Buffett used to, he doesn't put the picks out anymore, but when he used to pick a stock and invest in it, the whole idea would be, well, okay, let's break down the stock. And is it still fair valued or undervalued enough so for me to get in it with Buffett? Let me understand why he picked it, or the long game here with that. It's really wise at times to perhaps bounce back and forth depending on like in what aspect of life you're going to use this for. So, and then I also think like in business, while it might be exceptionally lucrative to be the innovator, it also still pays to be the imitator. You think about Tesla may be leading the EV space and is like the go-to goat of brands for EVs. But there's a bunch of EV companies underneath Tesla that have also done abundantly well. And I think that's important because it's the shameless cloning aspect. And so I really just think it depends on like in what aspect you're about to innovate or imitate. And that is actually, in order to do either of those successfully, you have to have the wisdom, the brains to do it. Because Monish completely stole everything from Buffett, literally right down as we shared to the partnership. And it worked beautifully, and I think something Monish also shares quite frequently is the fact that he doesn't understand why humans are so bad at imitating. Like he's like the human psyche is, I mean, we're just terrible at cloning. But he's like, if you can learn to clone, you will be ridiculously successful. But the problem that people have with cloning is they want to be the unique snowflake.
Yeah,
And
it's a
it's
perception issue.
yeah, and that's the ego. You were talking about that, earlier.
Absolutely. And I want to say something to the credit of the idiots though, because it's hard being an idiot. Trust me, I know. It is hard being an idiot. Um and it gets harder every day, guys, let me tell you. But the thing is, I think in this game of investing, I don't want to say all of us, but I think a lot of us start out as idiots, right? Like I certainly did. I always talk about this. I came into this with like no real clue what I was doing. So I certainly started out as an idiot, but I'll tell you what, like I made it a point and did everything I could and still do everything that I can not to remain an idiot. Yes, you've got to start somewhere, but if you're an idiot, you really should do what you can to get out of that position, and that kind of lends you to them becoming an imitator, and then hopefully over time, just through experience and wisdom and knowledge gained, you can at some point become an innovator. And actually, now that I'm thinking about this and saying it out loud, I think that's kind of the process. I think that's kind of the evolution. You don't start out as an innovator. Maybe some people do, like on a rare occasion, but like in a lot of things, especially in investing, you start out an idiot. You have to work hard to not stay an idiot. And then once you get out of that idiot stage and into the imitator stage, you'll learn from other people. Eventually you'll kind of figure out your own way of doing things, your own method to the madness, and only through then over time and a lot of sweat equity can you move up to being an innovator. And I actually think that's a pretty important that's an pretty important evolution to follow. I think we should all strive to do that, because then once you move into the innovator position, or using another word for it, becoming a teacher or someone who passes along information or knowledge, that's how you pass the torch. That's how you share wisdom. And I think that's really, that's a lot of why Monish is so active, or Guy Spear as well, or even Warren and Charlie. That's why they made such an effort every year to do those meetings and speak directly to all the people, because they realized how important it was and the ripple effects that can come from passing along that wisdom and that knowledge. And it's really just a net positive to society. And I think, really, certainly us here in this podcast and on this platform, putting ourselves out there, I know that's a huge motivation. But even for those of you who are not putting yourselves out there publicly like this, I think you still have that same responsibility to try your best not to be an idiot, to then become an imitator, to then becoming an innovator, or rather a teacher, I think is really a better word for it. I think we all, part of our responsibility is to become a teacher and share the things that we've learned along the way to the people that are around us or the people that come after us. You especially feel this if you're parents, but you really have to work hard to do so. And I think that's one of that's how society evolves and progresses, right? That's the only way it can. And that's why, not to ramble too much, but that's why inventions like the printing press back in the day were so transformative, because it finally allowed just the mass replication of this shared knowledge, and made it much more easy to distribute. And obviously society advanced quite a bit from there and will continue to do so. But I think that's really, when I think about, the grand scheme of things, when I really think about what are we doing here? What is the point of this life? I think that is a big part of it, is just being able to learn and become wise and share it. And hopefully that helps make life better and easier for the people that you're sharing it to. Does that make sense?
For sure. And I have a question for you. I believe you are out of the idiot category. So
Some days. Some days.
okay, so let me ask you this. Between an innovator and an imitator, where do you see yourself today? And if you find yourself in the imitator box, do you ever feel the need to jump into the innovator box when it comes to investing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, I had a feeling this question was going to come up. And as I was talking, I was thinking about myself, where am I in all of this? And I think I'm very much still and always will be an imitator because I'm going to be a constant student. So I'm constantly going to try and be that sponge and imitate the things that I'm learning and putting them into practice. And I think through doing that and through having lived experience from that, I think that will simultaneously make me, in some ways, to some people, the innovator, or rather the teacher. I kind of like, I think that the three I's is a catchy way to phrase it, but I kind of like the teacher student labels better. I think it's maybe
The
a
other,
bit.
there's two types of people. There's teachers and there's
Yeah,
students.
there you go. There you go. But I think, when thinking about all of this, I think for me that's maybe a bit more fitting. And I think you can be both of those things at the same time. Um, is that a cop out answer? That's the best one I've got. Is that?
No, I think I think when it comes down to being a teacher and or student, I think you could be an imitator and still be a teacher. I
And you
think
can still be an idiot too, really, I guess. But
yeah,
but
for sure. Oh, for
but
sure.
but the idiot parts, here's what's dangerous about that. If you just, well, kind of like you said, you either, don't know you're an idiot. Well, I guess you either know you're an idiot or you don't know you're an idiot. And the dangerous thing is if you allow yourself to stay there. And I think anyone should make an effort to try and, I don't know, just continuous improvement. That's a huge part of this whole thing. And so I think everyone has a responsibility to try to continue doing so. I just think it's part of living a
I
useful and productive life.
I think everybody has a responsibility, but here's the thing about like life. Even though we all have responsibilities, some people will remain children forever. And they will, and what do I mean by that? Is just some people will refuse to actually become a responsible individual in this life. And they
Mm.
won't come to that table to be the adult. They won't come to the table to take on the responsibilities that I personally think at a stage and an age everybody should. I'm trying to be so careful with need or because everybody should and come to the table and pick up their responsibilities and take them on and grow but not everybody does it. And yeah, I don't want to. This is the deep end, so I really don't care what's said, but I'm
Uh-oh.
like, no, I look, it's bad when I'm like, I don't really like. I just look, man, and at my ex. Okay, I gotta say it right because and I was having this conversation with someone earlier because he called me about his ex, and this is probably why I'm bringing this up. But I said to him, I was like, man, like whatever happened, and they were engaged, and then she walked out on him and put the ring on the table. It was this whole like thing, and it's been months and months, and for him, I just said, man, you gotta love her, like you just no matter like she's just one of God's kids. You gotta love her. She's like you guys weren't meant to be, but that doesn't excuse. Here comes Peanut for the for the big show.
Now here's
That
someone who
doesn't
knows about love and heartbreak right here. Mr. Heartthrob
chime in at the
himself.
right time. I
Yeah,
said to
lover
him, it
boy.
doesn't excuse her though from being an adult, and acting accordingly.
Hmm.
And so why that then got me thinking is because the same thing with my ex is like, I kind of look at what her life has turned into, and again, if someone's happy, like whatever, they're happy, but I look at it and I'm like, to go out clubbing and partying and like just all no responsibilities and like I can't be with someone like that's why I broke up with her, right? Like I can't be with someone who's that like kind of aloof to the real responsibilities in life. And so I think some people will remain in the idiot category because it's so easy and it's so comfortable. and they don't want to take on the responsibilities. And if you decide to jump into the imitator box, you become responsible for decisions. And if you're in the innovator box, you now become responsible for not only decisions on behalf of yourself, but other people who you know are going to be imitating you. And so it's like a game of pressure, I think. And so I think a lot of people, it's a cop out almost to stay in the idiot box.
Yeah.
And people will stay there because they don't want the responsibility. But either way, you're still an idiot. Like it's not, you're gonna regret that, I think, at the end of your life.
Yeah. I think so as well. And along the way, certain aspects of life will be much more difficult. And I think, you know, being able to take on that responsibility, kind of going back to how we started this conversation. Peanut's on one right now, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Being able to take on those responsibilities, whether it's financial or otherwise, it feels good. Like there's something that feels good about knowing that when stuff hits the fan, you can handle it. You know, knowing that you have that resilience is a very empowering feeling. And I think there's a sense of confidence that comes from that. At least, this is how I'm kind of taking it in and feeling it myself. And I think that that's the kind of person, I mean, you have those deep roots. You are becoming that strong oak. And that feels good, On the other side of that, if stuff hits the fan and you can't cover like an $1,000 emergency or something like that, that's a scary feeling for sure. Just to know that if the first gust of wind that comes is going to knock you right over, that's very scary. But to your point, Ari, it's easier to, like, ignorance is bliss. It's easier to not think about that and just go to the club and deal with it later when it happens, I
Yeah,
guess.
but here's the reality of that, it is like these people who don't take the responsibility early on, they screw it up for everybody else. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
ripple effect in that. And so
Yeah.
when things hit the fan, with my ex's family event that had happened, I was the one that was covering everything, and I had everything together, and like it's not fair, to those around you. And I think that's what people don't think about. They want to be this child forever, and hey, like life's a beach, and like whatever, and I'm just gonna hang out. And that's not why we're here. We're not here to just hang out. Like that's not life. And anybody who thinks that is life, you're missing the entire point of what it means to have meaning. Like if I strike, millionaire, billionaire status and then go hang out at the beach every day, that's a meaningless life. I didn't do anything, So you got to take a guy like, I feel like Elon Musk is so contested now, so I'll use Jeff Bezos for this one. But you could take a guy like Jeff Bezos. He made it, billionaire, or a guy like Warren Buffett, and they didn't stop, and they kept going, and they had like Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, or Warren Buffett with giving all his wealth away. There's so much more to life, and to really find deep, deep meaning is what we're really doing here. And so anybody that is in that idiot category, or you feel like you might be in that box, I mean, get out. It's up to you. No one, I love this, man. No one is coming to save you. It's you. You have to save you. And the day that you realize that no one's coming to save you and it's up to you is the actual day that you grow some kahunas, and you become an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think about that often on my runs, to be honest, man. Like I just, these thoughts just drop in, and it's on like repeat, man. And it's just like, yep, no one's coming for you. Like this is it. This is what it means to win. You know, no one sees you out here at 4 a.m., at 4:30, at 5, at 5:30. But by the time I get back home at 6:30, 7 a.m., and I finally start to see other runners hit the street, I'm like, man, I feel so good. I was already out here. I did the deal. And now I'm going to go read or do something else. And like, it's like this, so it just, that boost fires you up and it just pushes you going. And I think on the other end of all this, you know, I, I think it's a Jocko Williams thing, or it might be, I think it is Jocko. Either way, he says, I'm feeling dangerous. But he goes, to feel dangerous is, it's not like it's not like you're a mean guy. You're not an evil person feeling dangerous. It's just that you can't be messed with because you have it all figured out, and the sense of like you've covered everything that you can possibly cover and plan for. There's always going to be things you cannot plan for. Those are going to come up. That's life. But to the best that you can, you did your part. And that makes you dangerous. That makes you a triple or a quadruple threat. Like just any, this thing out of nowhere, man. Like boom, my mom calls and it's like, this is now happening. And I didn't even flinch. It was like, okay, so here's how we're going to handle it. And like you just, it really does set into motion someone who can't be stopped, someone who can't be reckoned with. And I was talking to my brother just before this. Once you start on this path, there's no going back. Like, Ryan, can you imagine not investing a single penny for 6 or 7 or 8 months?
No, absolutely not. And here's the thing about becoming, quote unquote dangerous. Momentum works in both ways. If you establish those good habits that lead to greater preparedness, because I think that's really what Jocko's hitting at. I'm so prepared that nothing's like, my house is made out of bricks and they are not going anywhere. I don't care how big life huffs and puffs at me. This house is standing and this house is going to stay strong. There's so much power that comes from that preparedness, but that comes from just so much positive momentum. You start out putting the $5 a day into VOO or whatever, then over time it compounds and compounds. You start running, even walking. Just like Ralph last week, actually, man. You go up, make the decision to go out for 12 minutes. You're going to run one of those minutes. You're going to walk the next 11. You're going to repeat that, except day 2, you're going to run 2 minutes. You're going to walk 10 minutes. Then day 3, you're going to run 3 minutes, walk 9 minutes, so on and so forth. That momentum builds upon itself, and if you just let it, if you just follow that, it's like you won't even recognize yourself a couple months, a few months, 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road, and that momentum is really just going to snowball into something incredibly powerful, and then you find yourself incredibly dangerous, incredibly prepared. But it works on the other side as well. If you don't do those things, if you have negative habits and make poor decisions, well, those are going to negatively compound. And at the end of the day, it's basically it's making the decision to either stay an idiot and get deeper into a hole or get yourself out of it. And like you said, Ari, at the end of the day, it is all on you, and it always has been, and it always will be.
I think it's such a great question to cap us off with here. Is like, in which direction do you want to compound? And if you really, when there's two, I mean, it's just this, it's so binary, man. It really is that simple. I think a lot of people like to make life so gray. Again, and the gray is super, super comfortable because you're not all in, you're not all out. You're just somewhere wishy-washy, maybe not, right? And it's like when you make the decision to start compounding in a positive direction, and that momentum compounds, to your point, I mean, you are unstoppable. Now, if you make the decision to compound in the other direction, I mean, good luck with that. And that's where I say, like me, dude, my ex-girlfriend had to become an ex-girlfriend. And I am willing to walk away in 5 seconds from people who are not compounding in the right direction. I will give you a shot. I might even, I gave her 3 strikes, right? And it's like, But if you're not going to begin or like eventually get in a certain time frame to just like be an adult and be responsible, I'm out. And I just think a lot of people need to start making that decision. Ask yourself deeply, in which direction do I want to compound? And then in all areas of your life, well, are your friends compounding in that direction? Because if they're not, they're going to play a pretty crucial role in how you're compounding. And, it's just everything, man. Your job, is your job a toxic environment, or is it beneficial for your health, for your mindset, for your career advancements? Like in every area, just how are you compounding? And I think honestly, man, if anybody walks away with anything from this episode, it's just to ask yourself that question. Which way do I want to compound? And then don't look back.
Dude, that's spot on. Because, I don't want to keep adding more because, like, I feel like we could keep going on about it. The last thing I will say, to your point, is life really is the game of compounding. And it's up to you to decide which direction you want to compound. So, yeah. I mean, I think I know the answer. Right? If we're asking people, which direction are you compounding? I think it's pretty obvious. Like, even if you're just listening to this, like trying to be the sponge, trying to soak up some hopefully positive information, and also, financially, we're all taking steps forward here. You're definitely compounding in the right direction. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say this, man. We are talking a big game about compounding. I think about this all the time. We are talking about it, and we want to believe, I think, the goodness of our hearts and just like our humanness. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's listening. It's like they want to choose compounding in the right direction. But here's the real question is who's actually going to do it? Peanut's going to do it.
Peanut is so going to do it, man.
That's who's going to do it.
Tell you what,
what I'm saying? Like, I just
compound his litter box. I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you what, man, like, I go back to this all the time. People like to talk about Buffett, and Monish talks about this too. You can talk about Buffett all you want. Buffett compounded over decades. That's what made him ridiculously wealthy. Most people aren't going to do that. They aren't going to be shamelessly cloning. And so I just think it's like what we're saying now. We're like, yeah, like which way do you want to compound? And yeah, it's like everybody's going to choose positive compounding. But the reality is, I think about 10% of the people out there watching this are actually going to start to positively compound. 10% of the people out there are actually going to sit with that question, really deeply sit with the question and change their life. There's 90% of the people out there who are going to hear everything we're saying. It goes right out the other ear. Unfortunately, that's the way life works. So don't be the 90 freaking percent. I think so many people take their anger out at the 1%. They should be taking their anger out at the 99%. That's my thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. With that said,
you're like Dr. Evil, bro.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
1 million cajillion bajillion dollars. So I think then the question becomes like not which direction are you compounding in, because everyone's going to choose the same answer, which is good. But I think if maybe do a quick audit of your life and your behaviors and how you're spending your time. What is one way that you can improve? One little minuscule change you can make to start compounding even more in the right direction. That's what I want to know in the comments.
Yeah. And that's the real end question here. So we'll leave it at that. Drop your comments down below. But there's more.
I do have one more thing I want to say. So coming into this conversation, someone in our audience, a guy named Nigel, shout out Nigel. He watches The Deep End a lot. He tunes into the episodes. He sent me a really, really great question. I wanted to cover it in this conversation. We've run out of time, but I just wanted to say to Nigel, I'm so sorry we didn't get to it this time. We will get to your question in next week's episode. I just wanted Nigel to know it's on our radar.
You want to go with next week's episode, or we're going to hammer it home for like 5 minutes?
No, let's go next week because it's not going to be a 5 minute. It's a great question, and I think we could have
an entire episode.
It could possibly be. It could dovetail into a whole nother hour. So I think we'll save it for next week. Yeah. I
Well,
just wanted
knowing
to.
us is probably
I just
the
didn't want
case.
Nigel. I just didn't want Nigel to think we'd forgotten about him. So I just wanted to say that before we wrapped up. Sorry.
So Nigel and the rest of the gang, I mean, tune in next week because this is going to be an epic conversation with a great question. But do comment down below with how you are going to change your entire life by just beginning with one move to compound in the right direction. And until the next episode of The Deep End, Ron and I will catch you there.